apparently I have to do a part 2 because for some reason, all of a sudden, I was gone. I was completely booted out of Facebook, everything, and had to come back in. So sorry, everybody, for this becoming difficult because of Facebook being stupid. Trying to think where I was now. So I'm the bad guy. They want the girl to come back into their good graces as long as she doesn't talk to me any longer. She refused that offer. And then next thing I know, I get a letter from Brendan. I really should get that letter at some point and read it to y'all. I don't think I've ever made that letter public. I got a letter from Brendan that was quite nasty with stuff that his mother told him. And so it was Brendan telling me, and then he was also telling me to pass it on to the other girl, that he wasn't going to send her a letter. He was sending it to me, one letter to me, and everything he was saying to me also should go to her. And, you know, so this crap of accusing me of, you know, doing the stealing money thing. And so this again is all at Barb's insistence. Barb controlling Brendan and telling him who he can talk to and who can visit him. And so that's why Brad would have to play this game where he doesn't like Barb. Barb has never treated him well. There has been times that Brad has posted negatively about Barb, but if he wants to truly have contact with Brendan, he has to kiss her ass. And the one thing, if you listen to the Brendan jail calls, and we do have them if you go into the videos here, where we have listened to the Brendan jail calls, you will hear in there of how Brendan would like to visit with Brad. Because Brad makes him happy. Brad makes him laugh. So it doesn't matter to me what I think of Brad, what anybody thinks of Brad. All that matters is that Zupcat, that Brendan is happy when he talks to him. So why would anybody, if you care for Brendan, my dog just hit my table that the computer's on, or the iPad's on. That's why you got the, looks like an earthquake. Why would you try to take that from Brendan? So Brad, my story time, yeah. I can ramble on and on and on. So Brad has come out recently, again, due to the new witness coming forward and another finger being pointed at his brother, Bobby, to complain about Barb. And he talked to a radio station. That's, the link is in here, somewhere in MAM Gossip. And Brad's also done a song. I haven't listened to it. I personally don't like his stuff. I've listened to one and that was more than enough for me. But, you know, that's me. But so he has a song or whatever that he just did this week where he sampled some of the calls, I guess. And first he got a threatening call from Scott Taddock. Then he had the sheriff show up or whatever. And now Barb's actually filed harassment charges. He's not harassing her. No, Anne-Marie, they were never close. They've never liked each other. I will listen to it at some point, Stephanie, because I guess I have to. Uh, but he's not harassing her, first of all, because he's not calling her. He's not going to her house. The stuff he's doing is not harassment. Yes, this is the live after the last one because all of a sudden my Facebook shut down. So I had to come back in. So first of all, that's not harassment. Then if you want to try and get somebody on slander or what's the other word? I'm telling you, I'm early dementia. Which I guess I shouldn't say because then people are going to say everything I'm saying here. How do we know it's true? Because I'm saying I've got early dementia. But I truly forget words. It's the worst. You have to prove monetary damages. So Brad saying the things that he said about Barb, you know, he said she's a whore, that she cheated on his dad. I don't know that story, but I know that Barb cheated on Tom Yonda with Scott Taddock. So that's true. Defamation. There you go. Slander and defamation are two different things. I never remember which one is which. One is done in writing and one is said out loud. I have been slandered, defamed, whatever. I've gone to a lawyer about it, not due to what's been done to me on this case on something prior. So that's why I knew during this case. I mean, there's literally a Facebook page that we've learned was originally started by Earl, and it was called Jax West Funding a Murderer. And then it came down, and then somebody else restarted it. And we actually know who restarted it, and that person is in this group. And I know who you are. But, so, I mean, so there is a Facebook page that has my name on it. Well, you can't see it anymore. I've kept some of the pictures. I mean, but some of the stuff they did in there is so, it's kind of funny because it's stuff like, well, I'm not even going to get into it. Other things that have been done to me from the Avery family is people contacted the Illinois Attorney General's office to try to accuse me of stealing money. They contacted my local police department and accused me of stealing money. I had to get, what the frick is his name now? Stephen Drizzen involved. And so I had to have my local police department call Drizzen. So Drizzen could tell them that, no, I haven't stolen any money. They have gone, yep, that was Crazy Lisa person, Lisa Sikowski. They targeted my boyfriend Jeff's print shop and went to his business on Yelp and was giving it negative reviews to target it. I mean, so people have come at me hard, you know, and trying to affect Jeff's business. That's affecting it monetarily. It's just been brutal over these 6 years or whatever it's been, that Barb, you know, and her people have come after me. And something that's funny, and I have this saved too, because they keep, they'll always bring it back to trying to say that I stole money. And so somebody asked Barb in her group about me stealing money. let me tell you about this money. When I organized the first Manitowoc June rally, we had 2 Brendan shirts that we were selling. There was a green one and an orange one. One shirt, the money would go to Barb to go into Brendan's account. The other shirt would go into Brendan's lawyers. All right. And so the shirt that was the money going to Brendan sold way more than what was going to go to the lawyer, but it still wasn't even total. And we did it for like 3 months at total. And I'm not a numbers person, but Jeff has all the receipts because Jeff was doing the printing. It's not even $1,000. Way less than $1,000, if I believe. And so what Jeff would do every month, once a month, he would make one deposit into Barb. Barb had a PayPal, and so he would transfer it from his PayPal into Barb's PayPal. And then on Free Brendan, I would post the statement, the balance of this is how much went to Barb. The attorney shirt wasn't selling well at all. So I waited until the 3 months were done. And then I had reached out to Drizzen and I said, the shirt sales are done. How do I donate this money to you? And then he asked me, how much is it? And it was I'm really bad at numbers. I want to say it was 200 and change. And so Drizzen says, I don't want it. It's a small amount. He doesn't care. So I was going up to Barb's house. We were doing a Facebook Live so I was interviewing Barb and Scott and Pete Dassey. So when I got to Barb's house, I handed her, because I rounded it up, and handed her $300 in cash. And I had even joked to her, oh, maybe I should wait until we're live, so people know I gave you this money. Ha ha ha. And we all had a good laugh about it. As I handed her money. Cash. The money that was supposed to go to Drizzen. That Drizzen told me he didn't want. He didn't care about. And now flash to when Barb's now mad at me. Here is Scott claiming that I stole shirt money. And then when the whole rally thing then goes to shit and now I'm not part of the rally, people had ordered shirts. And the people who paid me for the shirts that we had their money, I gave those shirts still to the rally. It got to Barb to pass out these shirts to people. And then Barb was told, anybody who hadn't already paid for shirts, everything's canceled. We're not making another shirt. So if anybody has paid Barb for shirts or whatever, you better refund them the money because I've now given you all the money that came in. It's yours. I'm out. So they then tried to accuse me of, because one of them called Drizzen's office. They did not talk to Drizzen. They talked to somebody at his office, and they asked if the office has ever received money from me, to which the person said no. So then they go out on Twitter and whatever and state as fact that I have stolen shirt money, blah, blah, blah. So that's why Drizzen now had to get involved in it when they're bringing in the Attorney General and my local police department to state I stole money for these shirts that I had given to Barb. And eventually, years later, somebody's bringing up the shirts again, because it happens all the time. And Barb actually comments and she says, Jax has given me all the money for the shirts. And it's like, are you kidding? Now, so I have that screenshot to keep forever where Barb is admitting that I didn't steal any freaking money. But So this is going to show you what I know, how Barb can affect everything, and everything comes back to Barb. So for Brad, I know if he wants to talk to Brendan at all, he has to be nice to Barb. And we see, since one of Carla's minions, who's a guilter, Carla has admins of the family fan group that actually believe Steven is guilty. And so this guilter made a post sharing the email that Brendan sent to Brad. So what this means is Brendan sent that email to Brad and then also sent it to his mom. Because look what I know when I was friends with Barb, that had happened to Carla. Brendan sent the letter to Carla and sends it to Barb, so Barb has a copy of it. So the same thing will happen with this email. So Carla has one of her minions post the hateful message that Brendan sent to Brad, telling him that he's not going to talk to him anymore. I can't remember everything it said, but it totally reminded me of the letter that I got from Brendan several years ago. I feel bad for Brad. I totally know how that feels. And I'm not related to Brendan. You know, Brad is his brother, and I do not doubt that Brad loves and cares for his brother. And as I said earlier on, or maybe in the first video since these broke apart, Brad makes Brendan happy. And that's all anybody should care about. So, you know, the woman who was part of that whole drama of why I no longer speak to Brendan, she still visits with Brendan, or did prior to COVID. So she still talks to Brendan and everything. I can't stand this woman because I also know she's in it for, and she calls herself Brendan's sister. It's really weird. But I know when she would go there, like the person, Curtis Bussey, who started Stephen Avery Project, she like was trying to organize to meet with him because, you know, she felt like he was famous, and she's, you know, wanting to meet all the famous people with the case, you know. So, you know, just gives me bad vibes all the way around on it. But I would never try to stop Brendan from visiting with the wackadoo because he cares for her, and that's what matters, right? Matters who makes Brendan feel good. Hold on, that's my son. Flu test has come back negative. My son hasn't been feeling well, and so I had to take him today they gave him a swab for both COVID and flu. So now he's got the results that his flu test is negative. Now we wait for COVID. But he had, when he first started feeling sick, he had a COVID test, and it came back negative, and they said it could be a false negative, so they wanted him to get another. So now we wait for the COVID one. So happy thoughts that my son doesn't have COVID. You can't sue somebody for harassment or for slander or for defamation if it's true. Brad calling Barb names, you can't sue. There's no monetary damages. Also, Brad, as he has stated, has nothing. What are you going to get from him? And he's a single dad. He's got 2 kids. You know, he has custody of his children. At least last I knew he did. What are you going to get out of this kid? Barb, you asked him to look at your computer. And he said it way back then. Barb is the one that lies and lies and lies. Oh, need a live reaction video to you hearing that song. Maybe I'll play it during this. Somebody private message it to me and the link to it. And I'll play it off my phone while we're on this live, as long as Facebook keeps us on here. Nothing that Brad is saying, at least from what I've seen, is not going to do any further damage to Barb's reputation. She's doing a fine job on that herself. And it's so interesting to me because, all right, I've been talking shit about Barb for years now, and Scott. How come they don't come for me? Go for it. Anne-Marie, did she ever come across you as a mother in pain? Yes. I've said before, I do believe Barb loves all her kids. And that she mothers to the best, not even the best of her ability, because she could do better. I think she does focus more on herself. That's why Brendan is able to be interrogated. Yeah, my dog is snoring. She loves her boys, but she cared more about herself. She was having her affair with Scott Toddock for like a year prior to her divorce. And Scott Toddock is Tom Yanda's cousin. But also, to be fair in that, they're cousins, but like when we talk about how Brad and his brothers really didn't have much of a relationship, Scott Toddock and Tom Yanda didn't either. So it's not like, you know, they were these really close cousins or whatever. But still, they are related. Cherry says, does Brian or Blaine talk to Bobby or Brendan? I am so... It's hard because my nephew is up in our spare bedroom where my computer is. And where I have all my Avery stuff. And so I have, because he filed a Freedom of Information Act and got their, both Brendan and Steven's visitors lists. So, and the visitor list goes from 2010 until 2020 and COVID started. So I have notes upstairs by my computer in this room up here. How many times everybody went and visited. Yeah, I know, Cherry, it froze and said I had a bad connection, but then came back. So hopefully I'm still here. Okay, good. Betty says I'm back. Yeah, I'm having awful service today. Sucks. Okay, sorry. I thought there was breaking news, but it's not. Um, so his brothers, none of his brothers have visited very much. And the years before Making a Murderer, both Stephen and Brendan did not get many visits from the family. They were just dropped. But then, once Making a Murderer came out and was a success, then everybody wanted to visit. And everybody wanted to be able to say, I'm related to Stephen Avery. The brothers seem to really only go on holidays. And if you listen to the Brendan phone calls, you'll see that really the only when he talks to his mom will say one of his other brothers are there. Do you want to talk to Bobby? No. Brendan didn't have any interest in talking to anybody. He just wanted to talk to his mom. The only brother he would still want to talk to would be Blaine at times. Blaine was the one he was closest to. They're the closest in age. And they would talk about wrestling, or Brendan would want to talk about songs. So they would have things in common. You know, so he didn't have that with the other brothers, with Bobby or Brian. Michelle says, do you still have those bizarre videos of Scott and Barb, the ones with the uncomfortable questions? Are you talking of the live video that I did with them back when I was with them? That got deleted. It was because Barb is always worried about guilters getting into the group and getting information. So we had done that as a Facebook Live, and then she only let it remain up in the group for a couple of hours, and then it had to come down. So that video does not exist. So Barb was like really particular. So when I was moderator, it was when people put in that they wanted to be a member of the group, they had to have a profile picture, and they had to have had their Facebook for longer than such and such. I can't remember how long they had to have a Facebook. And then their Facebook could not be private. It had to be public, because I would have to go through and look through their page first. And so if it was somebody who had their Facebook closed, they would have to open it just so we could look at their page. Barb was just, extremely paranoid of guilters getting in. And we know now with all these, I didn't know until this case about SAC accounts. I'd never heard that word, or words, SAC account. I do not have a SAC account. I do not go spying in their groups. I don't care. But they do here have their SAC accounts and their people. Hi, everybody who's here, just to report back to the Avery family, everything I'm saying. I don't do that. But that was just another thing of Barb's paranoia, that video could not stay up, because she didn't want guilters to get anything that they said. And I don't think they said anything in that would be bad. I mean, Scott cried. And I just remember, because, I met Pete, and Pete was really nervous because he's not a public person, and he hasn't been really involved in anything. And so he was really nervous to do it. So I made sure, like, when I would ask him a question, I would look at him, to get eye to eye. And I was doing everything I could to make Pete feel comfortable, because I do feel so bad for Pete. I mean, if you've seen, there's things that Scott has lashed out at Pete before, saying that he's more of a father to Brendan than Pete has ever been. And it's like, no, Brendan didn't even know you when he went into prison. And he would prefer that Pete not come on visits or talk to Pete on the phone. Brendan doesn't like Scott. Now, if you see him say anything or write anything positive about Scott, it's because that's what Mommy wants. Barb is all that Brendan cares about, and he doesn't want his mom hurt. So Barb will say to Brendan, so-and-so is being mean to me, and that will upset Brendan. Cherry, do you think that Barb, if she wanted, could turn Brendan against Pete? Yeah, she has. She has before. And Pete is Brendan. Pete's, seems to have the lower IQ, not the smartest guy. He's kind of awkward. One of the things I asked him is, what does he miss doing with Brendan, and what's one of the first things he would want to do with Brendan, and it's all wrestling related. Pete is the one that started Brendan's love of wrestling, because Pete's got a love of wrestling. So once upon a time, I was Facebook friends with Pete. But then when Barb got mad at me, Pete deleted me. And I do not have any harsh feelings towards Pete at all. Just like saying Brad has to play the game if he wants to have any contact with Brendan. That's what Pete has to do. Because Barb will turn Brendan against his dad if Brad's not playing ball. It shouldn't be about Barb. Barb should be putting Brendan's well-being first. Do you ever hear her in things? Why are they doing this to me? So when the judge rules against Brendan, her response is, why are they doing this to me? They're not doing it to you. They're doing it to Brendan. But her first thought is me, 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 me. She goes hunting all of November. It's a big to-do, that she's off of work all of November. It's a known thing that November is hunting month. It's when they can kill deer. And so Brendan knows he's not going to be getting any visits from his mother because she's going hunting instead. And when his conviction was overturned, and that happened in August, and I was tight with Barb at that time. And so it was the wildest thing because nobody was expecting it. So Barb was in Michigan visiting with the one girl. I was in Texas visiting a friend, Jeff's sister. And all of a sudden we hear that Brendan's conviction's been overturned. And so, oh my God. So we start, the three of us are talking about, what happens now and how do we protect Barb from the press. And so it's like, okay, so let's keep Barb in Michigan where people don't know she's in Michigan, that people were staking out her house and, where is Brendan going to live? And when he gets, so it was such an exciting time. But then obviously the state filed and blah, blah, blah. And then it had gone to the circuit court and eventually and gets overturned. And so by the time it's overturned, it's November. Barb cut me off in October. So August is when it's overturned. October is when Barb ditches me and the other girl. So November she is hunting when all this is going on, and she goes hunting instead. And so like the day that the ruling comes in, does Barb go visit Brendan to console Brendan? No, she continues hunting instead. And Barb had really gotten his hopes up that he was going to go home. You shouldn't do that, because you know that, look at what happens. And so Brendan had given away all his stuff to other inmates. I'm leaving, so take my TV and blah, blah, blah. And so he's thinking he's leaving, and now he's not. And the one person he loves more than anyone continues her hunting trip instead of going to see him in prison. But she's the one in charge of who gets to see him or talk to him. I don't know why she is singling out Brad, because there's plenty of people who have been online saying things about Barb, and for years. I know Brad lately has really been fuming. And he has said some ugly things. He has said some, called her some pretty nasty names. But it's interesting to me that she's singling out Brad. Why? The only thing I can come to is Brad is the one that she tried to get his help in covering up that computer. Yeah, Cherry, I saw that that Blaine thing too, which I thought was pretty interesting. I've never met Blaine or spoken to Blaine. But let me tell you the history of Making a Murderer on Facebook. When Making a Murderer came out in December 2005, or 2015, sorry. See, numbers. Curtis Bussey is who started Stephen Avery Project, which was the very first group there was. That's why also Stephen Avery Project is the biggest. That's why we've got over 200,000 people on that page. Because it was the first one there when Making a Murderer was this huge thing. And when I took Stephen Avery Project over, it had 100,000, and so I have more than doubled it since I took over. Pat on my back. And it's not just me. There's a team of people who all work on Stephen Avery Project. It is not just me. A lot of times I'm the one that does the least amount of work. So let me say that too. Thank you to the moderators of Stephen Avery Project. Blaine and his wife started a page for Brendan. So there was Stephen Avery Project, and then there was the page that Blaine and Courtney started for Brendan. And then Carla got in the mix. There was this other person, I can't remember her name. I want to say her name was Jennifer. She had started a family supporter page. And Carla got her little claws into that group and had that person make her an admin of it. And Carla was causing so much drama and bullshit that then that girl just wanted to take it down and go away. She wanted to leave the case, everything, because Carla and her minions do some really dirty, nasty things. And so what Carla ended up doing is putting a guilter in as an admin. And then all of a sudden, it was the craziest thing in one night. All of a sudden, this support group for Stephen and Brendan, the name of it changed to Stephen is Guilty or something like that. And then everybody who was in the group was slowly deleted out of it. So that was the first little... So Carla had gotten into that group. She tried to order that woman around who started it. The woman didn't like it, wanted to just take it down and go away, and then Carla destroyed it because of that. But meanwhile, Blaine and Courtney were running this Brendan page. And at that time, Barb and Carla hated each other. So there was no mixing of those groups at that time. And Carla named herself the family spokesperson. And is trying to make it like anything that's about Stephen and Brendan have to go through her. Well, Barb and Brendan didn't want Carla representing them at all. And it was Blaine and Courtney that had started this group. And for a couple years there, it was a total clash and a fight between Carla's groups and Barb's groups. Then, Barb and Carla get friendly again. And Carla is then added into the group that Blaine and Courtney ran. And so eventually, Blaine and Courtney are pushed out. I don't even know if they're in that group anymore. I don't even recall what that group is called. Justice for Brendan? I think it's Justice for Brendan. Something like that. So, I know Blaine and his wife Courtney cared for Brendan. That they were so quick to, make this group and want to be supportive of Brendan. But once Carla really came into the mix, it destroyed it all. So, Blaine, I feel for him that Brad posted that message. Brad should not have done that. Unless Blaine said, go for it. He blew up Blaine's spot. That is his mother. So maybe Blaine was venting to Brad. But maybe he's, does still have a relationship with his mom. And that may be what pushed Barb over the edge to do this filing, is the whole Blaine thing. And now you don't know if Blaine is going to lie and say he never sent that to Brad. So if Blaine is no longer talking to Brad, that's Brad's fault. I'm not going to blame Barb on that. Brad should not have posted that screenshot. I post lots of screenshots. But if something should be private, I will keep it private. And that one is something should not. Aspen, there's no possible way Gregory Allen is Bobby's dad. That's somebody just trying to sensationalize it and no, it's not Gregory Allen. Pete Dassey is Bobby's dad. I have no doubt, of that at all. Actually, I should say, who knows, because Barb cheats, but it's not going to be Gregory Allen if there was another father, but I don't believe there's another father. Why do I feel like Brad would post that? Because he was pissed and he wants to hurt Barb. Good way to hurt her. To show that her son is saying bad things about her. That would hurt. That hurts any mother to see that their child is talking about them like that. So Brad shouldn't have posted the Blaine thing. But it's nothing to sue him over. That's not harassment. That's not defamation. That's not slander. It just was nasty. It was mean to post that. I don't care about Barb's feelings on it. I care about Blaine in that. If Blaine said go ahead and post that, then I'd be fine with it. But I would bet Blaine would not want that posted. Pete, I feel bad, really bad for. I think I even tried to reach out to him once. After he's deleted me, and it was when Scott was in some news thing talking about bitching about Pete and saying something about it's not Father's Day for Pete because he's more dad than Pete will ever be. So I think I reached out to Pete on that because that was something that I thought was way across the line, and I totally understand Pete not having anything to do with me, because if Barb was to find out, Barb might cut off his contact to Brendan. But I thought I would at least reach out to say, I'm so sorry, that I feel for him. I never heard back from him. And if I had, I wouldn't go public with it, because I wouldn't want him punished and Brendan taken from him for that. Pete's a nice guy. Now, I have heard nasty things about him from the Avery family, that Pete might not be as nice as he seems. Pete was there the night the cat was burned. Was it Pete the one that actually burned the cat? I can't remember which guy actually burned the cat, threw the cat in the fire. It was not Steven that everybody says. But Pete was there that night. I know Steven doesn't like Pete, but Pete is married to Steven's wife. People forget that. So the woman that Steven was married to and had 4 children with, who divorced him when he went to prison for Penny Bernstein, married Pete. So Pete has raised Steven's children, who 3 out of the 4 don't talk to him. Only Jenny talks to Stephen. So, but once upon a time, Pete and Stephen were friends. But Stephen's never liked Scott. Nobody in the family has liked Scott. And when I visited with Dolores, she told me she thought Scott killed Teresa Halbach. And that was a big thing about the original GoFundMe money. The infamous GoFundMe money. The first account when Making a Murderer first came out and made a whole lot of money. A lot of money. And the money was to be split between Stephen and Brendan. Stephen's half went to Kathleen Zellner. It's gone. Brendan's half was in an account, but that account had Dolores, Chuck, and Barb on it. And the only way money could come out of that account is 2 of the 3 would have to sign for it to approve it. And so that was done because the family was so concerned about Scott. And what they always said was they didn't want this money used to buy Scott a new truck. Barb later started her own GoFundMe. Well, somebody else started it for her because she doesn't know how to do any of that stuff herself. And Scott ended up with a new truck. So, did it come out of that GoFundMe? People started complaining to GoFundMe, wanting their money back, and Barb took it down. Once people were demanding, and they were demanding, wanting to see where the money was going. And Barb had done this really big thing that I thought was odd at the time. When Brendan's conviction was overturned, she's like wanting to rush out and buy stuff for Brendan. And so she took money out of the GoFundMe and she bought a TV and a game system and all this stuff for when Brendan comes home. Not knowing for sure he's going to come home. Then something she did that I know because this is when we were friends. She took a picture of Brendan's room and sold the picture to TMZ. I think they got $800 for the picture. And so the girl I talked about that we both got kicked out, that was her number 1 at the time, those 2 split the money. And then the second picture that Barb sold to TMZ was it the second picture? Was the picture of the tattoos. Ugh. It won't let me do it. And I would have to get up. I'm trying to just put that down there to show the tattoo. So the picture of that was sold to TMZ as well. And then the 2 of them fought over the money. And then the other picture sold to TMZ was that Tracy Keogh asshole. And what did they call themselves? Brendanites. Weird, obsessive, crazy people. Called themselves the Brendanites. And so they bought Brendan a guitar. And so this guitar was in Brendan's room, and they took a picture of the guitar that the Brendanites bought for Brendan, who's in prison, and that this guitar is now going to sit at his house. And that was sold to TMZ. But then Barb accused that girl of being the one to sell the picture to TMZ. But when this all happened, that girl was no longer with Barb or any, so she doesn't have that picture. She didn't have any of that. It was Barb who sold the picture of the guitar to TMZ. But when people would accuse her of selling these pictures to TMZ, she didn't want people to know that. And so she would, clutch her pearls and say, not me, I didn't do it. But I was on the inside of the original pictures, and I know for a fact that Barb sold those pictures to TMZ. So, money. Money, 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 money. I have so many stories of things that I know from my time being friendly with the Avery family and when I've become their enemy. Once I find out, that people are not on the up and up, I was like a lot of people who, when they just watch Making a Murderer or whatever, and it's like, oh, I feel so bad for the family. That was me too. I felt horrible for all of them. But then when you dig around and see more, can't really feel sorry for most of them. The only one I feel sorry for is Dolores. Roasting session. Dolores was always there for Stephen. Even when Stephen wasn't nice to her. When you listen to those jail calls, you see firsthand that Stephen can be mean. And Stephen was mean to his mom. Jane asked, does it freak you out a little bit that I was around Scott? At that time, no. Keep going. I just got a message. At that time, I did not believe Scott and Bobby were involved. I think at that time, I was on that either it was Ryan Hilgas or George Zipper. I was convinced at some point that it was George Zipper because of, one, Zippers was her third appointment, was her last appointment of the day. All right? So that's the last place she was supposed to be. When you listen to the first law enforcement calls, and you can find all this stuff on StephenAveryCase.org, even law enforcement talks about the Zippers was her last appointment. All right? And then when you read their interactions with him, he said that he wanted to press charges against Teresa for trespassing, and if she comes on his property, his dog will eat her. So I thought at one point it was George Zipper, that she had left Stephen Avery's house, went to the Zippers, and I believe the Zippers, because it wasn't George Zipper's car that she was there to take pictures of. It was his grandson Jason's. So, and I believe it was a hustle shot as well. And so, for all I know, George Zipper didn't even know Teresa Halbach was coming. And this car was off in the yard somewhere, so that Teresa Halbach walked over on this property to go take pictures of the car. And I'm like, and George shot her. And there is a smelter, because, oh my God, when you start looking for smelters in Manitowoc, they're like everywhere. And so there is a smelter not far from the Zippers. So I believe at that time, and this is also before Kathleen Zellner has really been on the case, that she's put stuff out that is pointing fingers at Bobby. You know, so we didn't know then all we know now that points at Bobby. So what I saw of Scott at that time is I actually felt bad for Scott. And I did talk to him. I asked him about the fire, about his talk, you know, that the fire height changes. And the answer he gave to me is totally believable. That, because also the time that I went and interviewed Barb, Pete, and Scott, after the interview, Brian Dassey came to the house. So I met Brian Dassey and spoke with him a little bit. He was a really nice guy. I liked him, and he brought his kid over. And so he had told me that what was done to Brendan was done to all of them. Dietering and Uyghur tried to manipulate everybody in that family into saying the things that they wanted them to say to fit their narrative. It's just Brendan is the one that was able to do it. That, you know, couldn't fight against it. And Brian does not seem like a lot in the Avery family with the lower IQ. You know, he seemed like a smart guy. So I think Brian told them to go fuck themselves. I don't recall exactly. But then in talking with Scott, when it comes to the fire, the same thing he was saying was done to him. That they wanted Scott to say the fire was bigger than it was. And that what Scott told me is he doesn't even know if there really was a fire. He doesn't recall. Sorry. UPS driving past the house, so now Mallory has to, you know, be on alert. Big nasty truck driving down the street. And she was sound asleep snoring a second ago, and now she hears that truck and she's open at the window. So I empathized with Scott, and I had a decent relationship with Scott. We would joke around about things, but the things I also saw was he never let Barb talk on the phone by herself. So anybody that talks to Barb, she has to put it on speakerphone so Scott can listen. So that's very odd, right? And then another thing is he knows exactly how long it takes Barb to drive home from work. And so if she is not home, he flips out on where were you, what took you so long to get here. Another thing is that he wants that house clean, you know, so Barb needs to cook that dinner, and when dinner's over, he wants the kitchen cleaned up, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, Barb works a lot. You know, she works at that factory, and, you know, so she's got a full-time job and is working every day, and Scott is always getting himself hurt, so he's off of work. So he's home, yet Barb's got to get home and make dinner and then clean it all up. But also, on the other hand, I never saw Barb to be this, you know, shrinking violet. You know, she would yell at him and she didn't seem to be scared or intimidated by him, but still there were all these things. And so, and a thing that I can tell you is, so the girl that went psycho, who was the number one, she was going to visit Brendan, drove here, stayed here the night, and then the next morning, a Saturday morning, she was driving to Portage to go to Brendan's prison. I went with her. I was not on Brendan's visitors list at that time, but I'm like, I'll drive with you for the ride, we'll chat and whatever. And this is also back when I used to talk to Brendan on the phone. So Brendan knew I was going, and I've told this story many times, but it's always so sweet. So, like, Brendan had asked me, what am I going to do while she's inside for all that time? And I said, well, I'll have my phone, so I have the internet, and, so I can, do stuff on my phone. Or that was a time when I was trying to get healthy and get in shape. And so I would go for walks a lot. And I'm like, so maybe I'll get out and go for a walk. And he's like, oh, you need to be careful, because if the inmates are outside and they see you, they'll whistle at you, and Brendan says it like it's something that I'm like, have to be all whatever about. And when she came out for her visit, she gave me, one of those lunch bag size of Fritos. It was open, half eaten, but she said, Brendan sent these out. He figured you'd have to be hungry and he wanted you to have it. So that's, Brendan's sweet. But so then on the ride home, Barb wanted to know how the visit went. She was hunting. She and Scott go to 2 different deer stands or whatever it's called. I'm not a hunter and don't know much about that stuff. But this is a time then when Barb is not with him, nor does she have to put her phone on speaker for him to listen to the call. So the call was on speaker in the car, so we're both talking to her at this time. And Barb told us that she's had it with Scott and she's going to leave him. And she had already talked to one of her sons. I don't recall which son. And that he's already said that she could come live with him.